It's time for the MLB This Week podcast. Well, Ken Rosenthal is talking about splitting the baseball season. Of course, we're going to talk about reviews of the standings and stats leaders, and Minute Maid Park gets flooded even with the roof closed. All on this edition of MLB This Week podcast. And hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of MLB This Week Show. It's the MLB This Week podcast, we like to call it. My name is Rich.
And I'm Gary.
And Gary, we're back after a nice week-long off here with the Memorial Day holiday. It's good to be back in the old podcast chair.
Yes, it is, Rich. I got a little itchy last week at this time, but great to be back. It's nice to charge up the batteries every now and then.
Yes, it is. I hope everyone had a great Memorial Day holiday out there, listeners of the podcast. And as you said, Gary, I was scanning the news all week, and last Sunday I was itching to go also. We had all kinds of stories we could have talked about, but it was good to have a week off, and we have a ton more stories in the past week or so for our listeners this week. And you have probably the top story of the week here with Ken Rosenthal and his kind of a zany idea.
Well, yeah, Rich. Ken Rosenthal of Fox Sports is talking about a split season. 2 halves of 81 games each would improve the game in 2 notable ways, creating September-like urgency throughout the season and giving teams that stink in the first half, really a chance to come back and start anew in the second. Now, this is nothing new. It's done in tons of different leagues do it. A lot of the minor leagues do it. There's only a handful that don't. I think the International League doesn't do it that way, and a few others, AAA leagues don't do it, but I don't know. It's something different. If you go to Ken Rosenthal split season, if you Google that, you can read the entire article on it. But he seems to think it would be good. It would create more interest in certain towns. It would be great for Fox because the ratings would be better. Mm-hmm. And the 162 game season, or there's been talk of shortening that to 154. It'll be part of what it makes it special, yet it would be able to just split that and try to make it more special. So a different idea. I really don't know. I have to digest it a little bit because it's so out there. Don't know what I would think. It's almost reminiscent like when they had the strikes there. They did that split season that time, but I don't know. What's your thoughts on it, Rich?
Well, I just heard about it recently, and I really don't have enough information to say whether or not it would be a good thing or not. I'm reading it right now. A split season, 2 halves of 81 games each. He's saying it would improve the game in several ways, as you said, creating that urgency. But I'm not so sure the urgency would be any more than it is now. If you think about it, going up to the All-Star game is usually what they consider the halfway mark, even though it's a little more than halfway. Mm-hmm. I'm just not so sure that it's going to be a panacea to change much, really. I mean, I'm trying to understand what would change in that 2 split seasons, so to speak.
Well, I think the whole idea would be like he says, if you get off to a lousy start, and you could be dead in the water the first half, and it'd be hard to climb out of it the entire season. But you could get off to a good start in the second part and hang on and actually end up in the playoffs. I think it's an effort to try to get more teams into the playoffs. I think it's an effort maybe to do away with the just the one wild card playoff game. I'm not really. I like the two wild cards, but I don't think I'm a fan of the one game playoff. I think at least 2 out of 3 should be in that. But I think it's stuff like that, and it's just there's so many teams last year that were in certain places that lost out that should have been in the playoffs, and they weren't because of the way the current system. But I don't know. It's an interesting idea, something to kick around, and we'll see if it goes anywhere in the future. But it just seems like they're throwing all kinds of stuff against the wall.
Yeah, and that's what's a little bit strange. Yeah. I'm not so sure that the game needs to be changed all that much, even on the blog where Rosenthal describes his plan here. There's a top commenter that says baseball would be so much better without all the pin-headed reporters and analysts telling us how to make baseball better. He's got 30 likes on that comment. So there are some dissenters out there. If you're going to do that, then you got to do something with the DH, I guess. You can't continue to have a game that's played as it is now with 162 games and then keep the DH in one league and not in the other. If they do it, it would be worth a try, but not so sure that baseball needs that. There's sort of an ebb and flow to the season right now. Sure, a lot of the teams that are out of it are going to make it up next year when they get a better draft pick. They're going to be in the top round for draft picks. So that's how I think a lot of the teams naturally rebuild their clubs over time.
And that's a good point there with the draft picks. And I know I've heard this brought up by people too, not only baseball, but every sport, that we actually kind of, if you think about the draft, we kind of reward people for being bad. If you finish last, you usually get the first draft pick. NBA has that totally wacky system with the lottery balls, and you get so many balls depending upon where you finish. I don't know what the answer would be for that. Maybe they got to look at a different way to even do the draft, because it does almost encourage a team to be in last place if you want to build your team back up. Heaven forbid that they would go out and tank games just to get a draft pick, but we've seen it in basketball and in some cases in football, so I guess anything's possible. But I don't know. Like I said, I think they're throwing things up against the wall, and I agree they'd have to do something. And Rosenthal was one of those that came out and said that the DH should go to the National League, so I guess we know where that would be heading from his point of view. But
yeah,
it's an interesting idea.
Just reading into it a little more now, he says, think about it. 2 trade deadlines likely would be necessary, leading to greater action and more complex decision-making. Would a team such as the Marlins sell knowing it could try again in the second half? So, yeah, I think it adds a little bit too much complexity. Just my opinion right now. That could change. I mean, it could be exciting. I'm not too sure that the teams that didn't do well in the first half would suddenly turn around and be all that great in the second half. It's almost like the season now. A bad team is just going to be bad, basically.
Well, yeah, I guess, but you never know. I guess. I don't know. But I mean, they could change that with the trading deadline too. I don't know why they pushed it back. Maybe they should move it back up a month. So it used to be what was it, June 15th or something, and now it's July 31st. So don't know why they changed it. Maybe make it July 15th or something like that. But I just thought it was an interesting concept to throw out there and see where it would fly. And apparently that's what Ken Rosenwald's doing.
Yeah, and as you said, there's a lot of different changes being thrown up against the wall somewhere, and some people are seeing if they're going to stick. So who knows? There's a lot of not so sure baseball needs these changes, but a lot of people seem to think that's a possibility.
Yeah, I guess they're always looking for something. So we'll see. But Rich, I was looking at the standings, and I was amazed at some of them because it's just it's really pretty incredible when you look at them and look at some of the teams. And I think we discussed this already that had these great winter meetings, and we thought, oh my God, these teams are going to be so terrific, and wow, they're doing crappy.
Yeah, and then some of the teams that were off the radar. Especially in the American League. I'm just glancing over the American League standings right now. Just amazing. It's really exciting over there.
It certainly is. Of course, it looks like the Yankees, but the Yankees have not played well at all. And yet they're still in first place in the East, but by a half a game over Tampa Bay. And who have expected Tampa Bay to be in this position? I see Baltimore starting to creep up in Toronto, so maybe in the second half. But see, now the Yankees could have maybe hang on and win the first half if they had that split.
Yeah, that would be amazing. You've got every team just barely over 500 in the AL East. The Yankees, Tampa Rays, tied with them in first place, and Baltimore right behind them now. It just seemed like a while ago Baltimore was falling out of the standings pretty badly. Even the bottom team, the Boston Red Sox, are only 4 games back out of first.
And I think the real shocker, Rich, is in the Central. When you look who's in second place in the Central.
Yeah, the Kansas City Royals, just a half game out. But look who the top team is. Nobody.
Team is right.
Nobody figured that.
I mean, everybody thought Detroit, and I guess you should tell the folks that it's the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, the Twins with a 30-19 record, 19-7 at home. That's where they're doing it. 11-12 out on the road, but this is what makes baseball so great. Sometimes you see these teams that virtually have no chance to the people that are supposed to know about these things, and here it is, the end of May, almost June 1st here, and we're talking baseball with the Twins, and then out west, an even bigger surprise to me, the Houston Astros.
Unbelievable. And you know what? It doesn't look like they haven't stumbled. They haven't really fell back at all. So, I mean, at this time last year, we were talking about the Milwaukee Brewers, if you remember, and how good they were doing. And they were in first place and held on for practically the whole year until the last month. So Houston could experience the same thing, but Houston's a little bit younger, and maybe, they don't really, maybe there's no pressure for them because, hey, nobody picked us. Let's just go out and play. And as you said, they're got a 4.5 game lead over the Angels, who seem to straighten themselves out now, and Texas is in there, and the pick out in the West, everybody was picking Seattle and Oakland, and they were on the bottom.
Yeah, and that's the amazing thing is the Astros have a 15-8 road record. Their home record is kind of ordinary at 16-12, but the Astros are doing it on the road, whereas the Twins, their home record is making it for them. So we'll have to see how they continue to do over the season. But yeah, the American League has been very refreshing.
Well, and I think one thing that we can say for certain, Rich, is that these teams are on the rebound, if nothing else. I mean, they even if they fall apart from here on out, they still look like they're putting together something good in these two cities, and that's always good for the game when you can mix it up and have different teams performing well.
Absolutely. And we'll take a look at the American League leaders here real quickly. Batting average, Prince Fielder is leading the way at 359 as of the date we're doing this podcast, May 31st, 2015. In home runs, it's Nelson Cruz. He's got 18 for the Seattle Mariners. Runs batted in, Toronto, Josh Donaldson with 39 RBI so far. And around in the pitching, it's Felix Hernandez out there in Seattle with 8 wins so far. And the earned run average, Dallas Keuchel for the Houston Astros with 1.76.
And he's really having some comeback year there with the Astros, really doing a good job.
Yes, he is. Looking at the National League, it's a little bit more as planned with that league, of course, Gary. In the NL East, it's the Washington Nationals. They've stumbled quite a bit so far this year, but somehow they're putting it together here with a half-game lead over your New York Mets.
Well, I got to say, the Mets had a terrible month of May after a terrific April, and yet they're still above 500, 5 games above, and they're only a half game out. Washington's dropped their last 3. The Mets could have been in first place if they would have played better against Miami this weekend, but they dropped 2 out of 3 and still picked up a game on Washington. And Washington has got some problems, Rich. They got Bryce Harper. He's going crazy. And that's good for them. But they lost Jason Worth now until August, and he's a big cog in their machine. He fractured his wrist, got hit with a pitch ball. And Steven Strasburg went on a disabled list with some tendonitis or some kind of shoulder discomfort in the shoulder and the neck region. He's got a little bit of a problem there, and you don't know with that kind of stuff. He's on a 15-day DL. So Washington is not, the Mets got hit with a lot of injuries, and it's not an excuse. But Washington is also starting to get hit with some of those injuries. They started the season without Worth. They started the season without can't think of the infielder's name now. Redondo or
Rendon, I think.
Yes.
Anthony Rendon.
Don't know if he's back yet, but he's another person. And the center fielder they started the season without, and now he's back. Worth got back. They started winning, and Harper was hitting. But now with Worth out and Strasburg injured, it's not going to be that easy as everybody thought, perhaps, with Washington.
Yeah, I think you could say that team is ailing at this point as we go into June. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting as we continue on. Over in the National League Central, it's the Cardinals maintaining a 6-game lead over the Cubs in the NL Central. And then just a little bit further behind, a team that seems like it's lurking to me, Gary, the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah, they seem to have put it all together. They were pretty bad beginning of the season, but now it looks like they're starting to put it together, and McCutcheon's starting to hit a little. So they could be a force to be reckoned with. And then Cincinnati is there. Don't expect much out of them. They've got a lot of problems with their management and the manager himself and just a ton of stuff going on there. So I don't know if they can put it together. They just beat the Nationals, I think, 2 out of 3. So that's a good thing. Maybe even swept them. I think they did sweep them. But I don't know. I still don't expect them to make a big run. And, of course, Milwaukee, and it looks like they're going to be selling out pretty soon. They're going to start trading off players. There's talk of Gomez going somewhere and perhaps K-Rod and some other of their good young players. They've got a pretty good team. Their problem is pitching, as it always seems to be with the Milwaukee Brewers. And it's a funny thing, Rich. the Mets were always a team, and I go back to the Mets because that's who I know. But the Mets are a team that seems to be able to scout pitching and get pitching, and the Brewers get hitters, and the Mets always seem to struggle with getting hitters, and it seems that the Brewers struggle with the pitching. And maybe they should put their heads together sometime, and trade scouting reports or something. But
yeah. And you mentioned a player just a few seconds ago who made the news when we were off of our podcast last week. And I'll bring that story here. Andrew McCutchen for the Pittsburgh Pirates. It seems that somebody located his paycheck stub back around 8-9 days ago. They actually took a snapshot photo of the pay stub, obliterated some of the information that was on it, and sent it up to the internet. And of course, all bets were off at that point because we knew how much Andrew McCutchen had made for that particular pay stub. I'm not sure if you saw that circulating around the internet.
Not.
It was very eye-opening, to say the least. It was a paycheck for 2 weeks for McCutchen, and it said he had quite a bit of deductions as far as taxes and things like that. I think the gross was somewhere around $850,000 on the check, and then it showed after deductions a cool $427,098.49 was actually deposited into his bank account.
Wow.
So apparently the breach of this paycheck occurred in Chicago when the Pirates were playing the Cubs. At some point, McCutchen did receive the paycheck from the Cubs, but it was only a pay stub, of course, because he has direct deposit. Evidently, and he didn't even know what he did with the check, he left it behind in the visitors' clubhouse in some area, and it was discovered by somebody. Now, nobody knows who obtained the check and who took the pictures of it. But, of course, the Pirates and McCutchen were a little upset about it after it had reached the internet. So one of those things that happens, you got to be more careful.
Wow, that's pretty interesting, but I guess I'm not really surprised that the I mean, they always kind of figure out if he signed a contract for $23 million or whatever it is, and he makes X amount of dollars a year, and then you do the accountant. But imagine the team accountant punching those numbers in a computer or however it's done nowadays, because I doubt they handwrite that check. So it's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening. Of course, the numbers are boggling, but it's just like you or I. If we make $1,000, you can almost bet you're going to take home half of that. So that's probably what happened with him. His salary in 2015 is $10 million even. So every 2 weeks he's getting a check like that. You can imagine some of these other ball players that get 20 million or 25.
Wow.
Times that by 2 or 2.5, and then approximately how their every 2-week paycheck looks, and not a bad job if you can get it.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting though. I didn't think they got paid every 2 weeks. I thought there was a different payment method, but maybe you can request different times or anything.
I would imagine, yeah. It's just similar to every payroll that's done. You have to have your taxes taken out, and the taxes were, a lot of people don't understand that if certain players play in a certain city, they're going to be taxed just by that city a lot of the times. The check showed that he was taxed in Philadelphia. He was taxed in different states. California, I believe, has the tax, but it showed you exactly how much tax had been taken out for each city, in addition to his regular federal income taxes and regular deductions for that, which were pretty eye-opening as well.
So then that means that the team must take out all the taxes from the different cities. I was under the impression that they would. I mean, I don't know. I thought that perhaps that was one of those things where they would just take out the federal and the local, and then let the player worry about the rest. But that's got to be a man, it's got to be an accounting nightmare because you got all those guys and the managers and the trainers that travel, and you got to take all of that thing in consideration. I'm sure it's all computerized now, but wow.
It's a lot of accounting.
Yeah. And Rich, I'm curious about Minute Maid Park here leaking. But before we do that, can I just bring up about this great network that you started, baseballpodcast.net and baseballtalkradio.com. And you can hear this show and many other fine shows there. Rich's show, Fighting Phillies, my show, Mets Musics, and many more. San Francisco Giants, fantasy baseball, Milwaukee Brewers baseball, Canadian baseball, anything at all. It's there, and it's a great network, and I'm proud to be on it. And Rich does a great job of being in charge of that. And he's like the Papa Bear. He watches over all the shows and stuff and does a great job at that. So go check it out, baseballpodcast.net and baseballtalkradio.com. And also we have a Patreon site. It's patreon.com/MLBThisWeek, and Patreon on patreon.com. You can become a patron of the show, sponsor, and just send us donate a little bit of money every month to keep us going so we can stay on top of the show. And this is all self-supported, folks. We're doing this on our own without any monetary income at all. So anything that you could do to help us out would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, it would. And that's just about a cup of coffee a month or so. The folks over at Patreon make it real easy. You can donate one time or elect to do a monthly donation of, say, $2 or $3 a month, or even $1 a month. Just goes to help our expenses with the show, and it can help us get the show much better. We can do a lot more things. So stop on over there, and you can find our link right at our website, MLBThisWeek.com. Or as Gary said, you can go to www.patreon, that's patreon.com/MLB This Week, all one word. And that'll get you right to our Patreon page there. And Gary, thanks for the compliment on the Baseball Talk Radio Network. A whole bunch of great shows, a couple from Japan on that network. And you can even sign up for an audio book, a free audio book on the main page there through audible.com. And there's just a brand new baseball book out this week. It's called Big Data Baseball, and it's all about the Pittsburgh Pirates and how they've seemingly ended their 20-year drought of bad finishes with using the latest data and computerized information on players. It sounds like a good book, and like I said, if you don't have time to read a book, click on the link right there at baseballtalkradio.com. Sign up for a free 1-month trial membership. You can cancel at any time and get this Big Data Baseball book, and you can listen to it right in your car on the way to work. It's going to be a good way for you to listen to books.
Certainly is, and it's a wonderful network, and so honored to be on it. So tell me about Minute Maid Park flooding now.
Well, this past week, in fact, the story was updated last night. Of course, everybody's heard about the terrible weather that's been happening in Texas with the flooding all over the state, all kinds of tornadoes and things like that. Well, in Houston, they had closed the roof at Minute Maid Park on Saturday night, but it was no match for the rain. Somehow, heavy rain made its way inside and flooded some interior areas of the ballpark, back behind the stands and the concession area. And there's some pictures on the internet that some fans had posted up. There's literally like a small stream of water filled up into that area. Of course, when it rains, it pours, Gary, but this is going a little overboard, I think.
Yeah, I did not see that story, and I'm really shocked at that. But I guess, when it comes down that hard, the rain, it finds a little crack or whatever, and probably just found that opening and went right down, and as you said, behind the scenes.
Yeah, the weather was so bad that even a lot of the fans chose to wait it out after the game had ended. They still remained in their seats at Minute Maid Park, taking refuge from it. But yeah, tough time in Texas, and we hope everybody gets back on their feet. Those affected by the storms out there. I know we have a few listeners in Texas, Gary, and we wish them well.
Yeah, it looks like, oh boy, yeah, they had some. I'm just looking at some pictures, and boy, it's pretty nasty. So, here you think you build a a roof and everything, and you're gonna be protected, but it gets so bad, and they're having such bad weather there. It's really a shame, but at least nobody got hurt, we hope. And that's the main thing.
Yes, indeed. And you have a great story here on what's coming up next in baseball just in about a week or so with the draft.
Well, Rich, we always talk about, you were just talking about it, building your team through the draft. And the 2015 first-year player draft will take place on June 8th to 10th. And will be broadcast on MLB Network and MLB.com. So the schedule is the first day on June 8th, the round 1 through competitive balance round B will start at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and it'll be on live on MLB Network and MLB.com. Day 2 will start at 1 p.m., and that'll be rounds 3 to 10. Day 3 will be on June 10th and start at noon, only on MLB.com. The day 2 and 3 is only going to be on MLB.com, and that's round 11 to 40. So they do a lot of rounds. The Arizona Diamondbacks have the first pick in this year's draft. The Mets do not have a pick in the first round. The Phillies have the 10th pick. And the Astros actually have the second pick. So, in a way, the rich get richer, Rich. A lot to say. But the Astros having a good year, and then they have a high pick based on last year's finish. And actually, it's a compensation for not signing last year's pick. Their number 1 overall pick, Brady Aiken. They couldn't get a contract worked out with him. So they get the number 2 pick, which is kind of, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, if you can't sign the guy, then, tough. I mean, so they are actually getting 2 picks in the top 10. They're getting the second pick for that, and their regular pick, number 5 pick. So, as I say, the rich get richer.
That's true. And as you said, they did not sign Brady Aiken. The story behind it, of course, was that Aiken had a physical for the Astros after the Aiken and the team had reached an agreement with a $6.5 million signing bonus. Mm-hmm. But after the physical, the Astros weren't happy with what they saw. They felt he would be injured soon, and they were right. Just in the past couple months, there surfaced some pictures of Brady Aiken who had Tommy John surgery. So he did not sign with the Astros after, get this, they only lowered the signing bonus to $5 million, but he didn't do it. And now he's had the Tommy John surgery. So, where is Brady Aiken working out in all of this is a big question as well.
Yeah, and I understand all of that, but really, does that mean that they should get the second pick? I mean, I don't,
Well, they didn't come to terms with him. I believe he was the first pick overall,
mm-hmm.
2014. So, yeah, they've effectively moved on from Brady Aiken. So, it's not like they have any claim on him in the future. They have the number 2 pick this year. They sort of didn't come to terms with him, so this is compensation for that. I think that's pretty fair.
But should it be the second pick, or just should they just get a pick at the end of the round? I think that's what my confusion is. And I think the Mets were in this situation a year or so ago where they actually got knocked out of the top 10, I think it was, or because I think it was Pittsburgh or something couldn't sign their guy, and they ended up getting the compensation pick ahead of the Mets, and it just, I forget all the circumstances now, but it just didn't seem right to me.
Yeah, I guess the fact that Houston had the first pick and then they didn't come to terms with him has something to play into this. But yeah, as you said, the rich will get richer because the Astros are playing better now. And some of these teams that need a good pick, the Diamondbacks, for instance, the Rockies, the Rangers, will benefit from this. Hopefully, I mean, not all first round picks turn out. So, look at Mike Trout. I think he went 25th before the Angels picked him up. So
that's unbelievable. But like you say, look at Mike Piazza. He was like 60th or something in those days.
Yeah,
it doesn't always mean if you're the first pick that you're going to make it, like you just said. It's probably more often than not the first pick doesn't make it, and that's in every sport, pretty much. I mean, it's just, I can think back to some doozies that the Mets made, but it's gotten better lately. The guys have shown more progress that they've taken, but it's a crapshoot, and especially in baseball because they pick so young. A lot of these guys,
yeah.
Football, they kind of know because they've had 4 years of college ball. They have the tryout thing, whatever they call that. Basketball, you kind of know because you see them in the NCAAs. But even that's getting to be more of a crapshoot because now they just, these freshmen come out of school so quickly. I don't know. I don't like that at all in basketball. I think these kids are better off staying in college and getting seasoning and stuff. And that's the beauty of baseball. They have the minor league system, and they can pick these guys, and that's where they flame out if they're not going to make it, So, it's a tough one, but the pick. Baseball amateur pick it's not like it doesn't have the hype of the football or the basketball because I don't think we don't see these guys like you see the other guys. They got scouts out there beating the bushes at high school games and stuff, and you don't see these guys, so they don't have a name like the football players or the basketball players do, but it's how you build a team.
Yeah, they almost have to earn their name after they get drafted by a team and play well. That's a good observation there. A baseball player is a baseball player, but he's got to make it happen on the field.
Exactly. And I mean, now they do draft, the college players who people are more familiar with because of the College World Series and things like that. So you do get some players like that, but you still got to go out and prove it on the field, and you still got to work your way through that system. I mean, very, very rarely do guys come without playing minor league ball at all, and there's only been a few, and so it's it's a dues paying. You got to pay your dues and really work your butt off to get up to the majors.
And even one of the bigger stories about the draft nowadays is that it is televised on MLB Network and ESPN sometimes. It's made a big deal of. And on the broadcast on the Phillies today, they were talking about that, about how different major leaguers got the word that they had been drafted. And a couple of them, Mike Schmidt, they read about it in the newspaper the next day, way back when. There wasn't this instantaneous wire always connected to the public as it is now. And, just even 20 years ago, people would receive a phone call. Hey, by the way, the Brewers drafted you, or whoever happened to draft you just, 20, 25 years ago. That's the way they did it. But now in this day of internet and interconnectivity,
cell phones and things.
Yeah, it's just an instantaneous thing. It's not the way it used to be years ago.
That's for sure.
And Gary, talking more about baseball here, and in this country, of course, it's Major League Baseball. The designer of Major League Baseball's logo passed away recently. His name was Jerry Dior. He's the one that made that silhouetted logo of the batter with the MLB logo. He only received credit for it, official credit for 40 years after the fact.
Wow.
He was from Edison, New Jersey. And this logo with the player with the bat and the ball on it was adopted in 1969 to honor professional baseball's centennial. So, yeah, it's a very well-known logo. And, it was good that baseball finally gave him official credit for it.
And did I ever say what, or I should say who the player that he based it on, if any? Like they said, the NBA is Jerry West, and they have a similar type of logo. Was there any mention about who that batter is in that logo?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, but over the years he had been asked that question in interviews, and he stressed that that figure was not modeled on any specific player, and that he actually drew a generic baseball player up. A lot of people had speculated that it was modeled on, say, like a player like Harmon Killebrew. A lot of people took that opinion because maybe the silhouette resembled him, but no, he claimed that it wasn't any one specific player. It was just a generic baseball figure. So that's the way it goes. No specific player could take credit for that.
And as you say, since 1969, so 46 years, and it's become pretty iconic now.
Yeah. The designer, Jerry Dior, he was born in Brooklyn back in 1932. He was very happy to get this job. I was glad to land this assignment. He had been a lifelong baseball fan, and he was a big Dodger fan, of course, when the Dodgers were in Brooklyn, of course.
Yeah, and broke his heart probably when they left. So,
yep. In this article I'm reading, it says he then supported the New York Yankees. Of course, he was born in New York, so that's an easy one for him.
Well, there was no other team there until the Mets came 5 years later, so he really didn't have a choice in the matter. I remember as a kid going to Yankee games because, well, it was no other game in town, Rich, so you had to go there if you wanted to watch a big league game.
That's for sure. Thinking about people going to watch big league games, Gary, you have a story here of baseball's possible return to Montreal.
Well, there's a strong movement, Rich, towards a possible return to Major League Baseball to Montreal. And the question almost now is how and when, but that's a question for the future. Right now, Montreal Mayor Dennis Codere met Thursday with Commissioner Rob Manfred. John Morosi of Fox Sports reported that, and Codere said he hoped to convey the city's political will to land a franchise, calling the meeting the beginning of that process. I think what we need to establish is a roadmap. Our enthusiasm for this project is clear. We love the sport. We're serious about it. This isn't just a gesture. I don't know about a time frame, but this is a town for baseball. We're keeping the flame. And, Montreal had to prove that they wanted baseball back, and it happened last year when they had crowds of 46,121 and 50,229 to witness a pair of exhibition games between the Toronto Blue Jays and the New York Mets. Then they had to prove this year that it wasn't just a one-shot deal, and they took care of that in April when even more fans returned to the suddenly reinvigorated Olympic Stadium to watch the Blue Jays play the Cincinnati Reds. So they've been able to draw there. Everybody always said it's a great baseball town. What happened was that there was a number of things actually underway before the Expos left, I should say. And that was they were looking to build a stadium downtown. And the province, which is similar to our states, pulled out the money at the last minute and really kind of took the whole wind out of the sails about getting that stadium built. And part of the problem that everybody said was that they need an outdoor stadium. Now, I know what you're thinking. They're up north. There's snow, the whole 9 yards. But the thinking is that Montreal is such a beautiful city, and when they have really good weather in the summertime, folks don't want to go inside to a stadium. So they actually would need probably either an open stadium or one of the ones with a the dome that opens and closes, so they could be, if the weather is bad in April, say, play indoors and outdoors in the summer. But it's pretty well, everybody seemed to agree. And there's stuff on YouTube, folks. You can go and type in Montreal Expos fans and baseball in Montreal, and there's all kinds of things. I mean, there's a society. There's a group that comes every year. They were in Shea Stadium this year, and the Shea Stadium. Listen to me, Rich. I'm about 10 years behind the times. Citi Field, they came and they had their Expos jerseys and their Expo hats on, and they want a team back there, and I'd like to see it happen. Put them in the National League again where they should be, and then you got to put a team in the American League, I guess, to make it even again. But let's bring back the Montreal Expos, and I wonder if they bring them back, if they would call them the Expos again, because of course the Expos were named after the Montreal Exposition of 1969, which is like a World's Fair, and naturally there's nothing going on now like that. But the name is synonymous, so bring them back. Bring back the red and white blue caps. Let's have the whole 9 yards come on back.
That sounds good. And there's a project online called Montreal Baseball Project. It was started by an old-time Montreal Expos player named Warren Cromartie. A lot of people that follow the game over the years probably remember that name. He's suited up for over 10 years worth of Montreal Expo baseball, and he's one of the leaders at the forefront of this movement, trying to get baseball back into Montreal. And they're all over Tampa right now, anticipating Tampa not getting a new stadium, Gary. But as you said, it all hinges on Montreal getting a new stadium. That's going to have to happen. And some of the lawmakers up there are saying, hold on. They're not going to publicly fund this thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how it works out. Of course, the government would benefit from bringing games up there. So you never know. Maybe they'll get behind this support, but they certainly aren't going to foot the whole bill, at least with a couple of the articles that I've been reading on it so far.
Well, and that's the key, Rich. If they can get that stadium, they don't even have to have it open. If they can break ground and they're building it, I'm sure that they would allow a team to go there or start a new team because, they can always play in that Olympic Stadium. They can get, I think they'll draw if people know it's, 2 seasons and then they go to a new stadium. That's the key, and that's the key that baseball's got to be looking for. That if they can break ground, and they definitely have, they're building a stadium, then baseball will probably be good to go with that. But I'd hate to see Montreal in the American League East. They should be in the National League East. How about we give them, they can have the Nationals.
For example.
Let's make a trade. Now think about that. The Nationals were Washington always had an American League team, so why don't we make a trade? Tampa Bay goes to Montreal, and the Nationals go to the American League. I like that, Rich.
Yeah, that would be. I don't think the national fans would like that, but yeah, it's interesting. Over the years, of course, a lot of people that are longtime baseball fans and don't remember the good crowds that turned up in Montreal. Sometimes they had a few thousand per game, like 4,000 or 5,000, and there was always those empty type horns that you heard throughout the stadium, right, that echoed through infinity sometimes. And baseball died a bad death in Montreal for it to leave there. I'm not so sure it was the stadium as much as it was maybe the fans lost interest after the years in which they couldn't contend. They couldn't bring the playoffs there. That probably is what was the death of baseball in Montreal.
Well, it could be a combination of that and like I said, the stadium deal, and it is it makes sense in a way though when you think about it. I mean, Minnesota went to the open stadium as well, and everybody said why, but I think that had something to do with, again, people are indoors all winter in those cities because the winters are so bad that when they do get the nice weather, they want to be outside. They don't want to be locked up in a dome or a stadium. And I think it's there are people that swear today that if they built that stadium, that the Expos never would have moved. So who knows? But it's interesting, and I think it's time for them to get a team back.
Yeah, and an article in the Canadian Press called National Post, which is a nationwide newspaper over there, has headlines and saying Montreal has passed the first test towards the return of baseball to the city. MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred says. So it seems like Montreal could be well on its way back. Be interesting to see how soon.
And boy, they had some good teams too. Just a shame they never got anywhere with them, but boy, they had some good teams.
Yeah, they're a little foreign to even Canada sometimes with the French speaking and stuff like that. But yeah, it would be nice if they have a fan base and build that club back up again. It would be great for baseball.
Certainly would.
Well, Gary, it's been a great show and our first show back. We want to thank our listeners for staying with us. As Gary mentioned, there's plenty of ways to catch on to the show. You can subscribe via iTunes or go over to Stitcher Radio, our website, MLBThisWeek.com. And Gary, you have our last story of the week. This Ben is big.
Well, we've got a new folk hero on in baseball, and it's Ben Antcheff. He was trending there for a while on Twitter. Ben isn't your normal athlete. Ben is listed at 6'2" and 300 pounds, and he plays for the St. Thomas Bobcats, which is an NAIA a college team. And he amazes fans with his size and his skills as his team took on Lewis Clark State on Friday night. And he limited his opponent to 1 run in 4 innings, striking out 5 before being removed due to arm soreness. He made his season debut in late March after coming back from Tommy John surgery in the offseason. The party didn't last long for the Bobcats, though. They lost 10-7, and the Lewis and Clark State won the NAIA World Series title. However, this is the best finish for St. Thomas in school history, which won 4 straight elimination games to get to the title game. And Rich, who says you got to be in shape? I guess he is a big dude. If you're watching the video, you can see the size of this guy. If not, Google Ben Antcheff, Ancheff. He's all over the internet now, and hey, look, he got the job done, and Tommy John surgery, the whole thing. And I think if he's going to want to get to the pros, though, he's going to have to take off a few pounds.
Yeah, that would probably benefit him greatly in every aspect of his game. But, yeah, as you said, Gary, I did notice, like, the Panda is got a big girth to him. Some other players are getting pretty large, but they seem to get the job done. So, and they don't get smaller. They seem to get bigger, like Panda and a couple others I could name.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Must be all those nice steaks on the road out at the steakhouses and whatnot. Just too good to refuse.
I guess. I mean, can't be good for your joints, though, after a while, as we all can attest to once you get a little older. But, Prince Fielder's a big guy, though he's knocked off some weight. CC Sabathia is another big guy. Kind of strange, though, because he lost a lot of weight, and now looks like he put it back on. I don't know which is planned or not. He might have felt he was a little too weak last year, so he put some of the weight back on. But we've always had that. I mean, look at Mickey Lolich, always had a bit of a gut. And, of course, Babe Ruth towards the end of his career was a big man. So, but this guy, he's one of the biggest I've seen.
Yeah,
there's a couple of guys that are 300 pounds in the majors, but they're like 6'7", 6'8", kind of makes sense. This guy is 6'2", which isn't small, but he's really got some gut on him. So.
He's taken big to a new level, let's just say.
That's for sure. And of course, the powder blue uniform doesn't help at all either. It's very slimming.
Yep. So, well, we want to thank our listeners for checking out this edition of MLB This Week, and send us an email if you're a longtime listener or a first-time listener. Our email address is kind of simple. You can go to our website at MLBThisWeek.com. We have a form that you can fill out there, or you can just email us directly at talk@MLBThisWeek.com. Send us your comments, what you like about the show, where you listen from, and we'll give you a mention on the show.
Yeah, and don't forget baseballtalkradio.com and baseballpodcast.net. Check it out.
Yep. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you again next week on the Independent MLB This Week podcast.